Can India ever turn into an autocracy? Picture this. A single political party wins every seat in parliament. Then it amends the constitution, cancels all future elections and declares itself as the permanent ruler of India. Sounds frightening, isn't it? In 1973, the Supreme Court of India confronted this very possibility. In the landmark case of Kesavananda Bharati versus the state of Kerala, it gave an answer that would define India's democracy forever. The story begins in 1950 when the Constitution of India came into force. The government had big ambitions, land reforms, redistribution of wealth, but there was a problem. Whenever the government tried to push these reforms, the judiciary stepped in, laws were struck down, policies were blocked. A conflict had begun between the will of the parliament and the limits imposed by the constitution. In response, the parliament passed the first constitutional amendment, shielding certain laws from judicial review. This led to the first major confrontation in Sankari Prasad versus Union of India. The question was simple yet profound. Can the parliament amend the fundamental rights? And the Supreme Court said yes. This position of the Supreme Court was reaffirmed in Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan. But then came the turning point. In 1967, in Golaknath versus State of Punjab, the Supreme Court reversed itself. It ruled that the parliament cannot take away fundamental rights. Suddenly, the balance of power shifted. Major government policies were now under immediate threat. The Supreme Court actually struck down the nationalization of banks. The government felt completely cornered and responded aggressively. Through the 24th and 25th constitutional amendment, the parliament asserted that it had the power to amend any part of the constitution, including the fundamental rights. The stage was now set for the biggest constitutional battle, the battle for supremacy between the parliament and the Supreme Court. The trigger came from a quiet monastery in Kerala. The state government, using land reform laws, had tried to acquire the property of Ednir Math, led by a Hindu monk, Swami Kesavananda Bharati. The Swami approached the Supreme Court arguing that this violated his fundamental right to manage religious property. But this was no ordinary case anymore. What had started as a mere property dispute had turned into a full-blown constitutional crisis. For the first time in history, a 13-judge bench, the largest ever, was assembled. Arguments went on for a marathon 68 days and at stake was a fundamental question. Can Parliament amend anything under the Constitution, or was there any implied limitation it cannot cross? The government defended its position aggressively. It argued that the Parliament must have unlimited power to amend the Constitution, especially to carry out socio-economic reforms. But on the other side stood one of India's tallest legal minds ever. His argument was simple yet revolutionary. Parliament is the creation of the Constitution and not the other way around. Therefore, the Parliament cannot destroy the very foundation on which the Constitution stands. What followed was not just a legal battle. It was a battle for the soul of India's democracy. On 24th April 1973, the Supreme Court finally delivered its verdict. The decision was razor-thin, 7 judges against 6, but its impact was enormous. The court marked the historical declaration. The Parliament can amend the Constitution, but it cannot destroy its basic feature. Now, this was something entirely new. For the first time in history, the Supreme Court placed a limit on the power of the Parliament. This principle came to be known as basic structural doctrine. It meant that certain core ideas like democracy, rule of law, judicial review cannot be altered with, no matter how strong a government's majority was. Parliament can amend the Constitution, but the court refused to grant it absolute authority. And in doing so, it struck a delicate balance between change and continuity. The Constitution could evolve, but it could not lose its identity. This judgment did not just decide a case. It defined the future of Indian democracy. Why does this judgment even matter? Because it quietly protects Indian democracy every single day. Without this decision, a government with a strong majority could have rewritten the constitution entirely, removing rights, extending its powers, even ending elections. But the Supreme Court drew a line. You can change the constitution, but you cannot change its identity. And that one idea has held firm through decades of political change. Today, India has over 100 constitutional amendments, far more than countries like United States. Yet, the core idea of the constitution remains intact because in 1973, the Supreme Court ensured that power would have limits.